I'm stunned.
Okay, so here we go. We're recording here on Friday, a couple days before we normally do. This drops Monday morning, and we thought we were going to talk about Kyle Tucker today, which we will.
Honestly, really realistically, I thought of all of the signings that was going to happen for Kyle Tucker, it was going to be maybe a 10-minute discussion about, like, okay, what does he do for that team? The signing of Kyle Tucker is now an entire topic onto its own because it's going to bring the salary cap. There's no way after that signing there's not going to be a salary cap. But then, apparently, I'm behind on the news because apparently there's even more breaking baseball news I was entirely unaware of as I sat here unbeknownst to me this morning.
And it won't be as sexy when this drops on Monday, but that if it's happening to us in real time and you didn't know, and so literally it just happened that the Mets, the New York Mets, those Mets, it's not Cody Bellinger, it's Bo Bichette, 3 years to the Mets. Looks like they want him to play third base. And the initial report is that they're thinking about playing Beatty in left field, which if there's ever been a smokescreen about trading a player, there you
Is that right there? Goodbye, Brett Beatty. Oops. I mean, the all infielders team didn't really work for the Padres, but maybe it'll work for the Mets.
Well, and so I guess this was the fallback position, and I think we should spend more time talking about how Kyle Tucker and the Dodgers have broken baseball. Ha
Right.
ha.
I think that is the bigger signing because this
Right.
100% feels like a hard pivot from the Mets through the Kyle Tucker thing. And so let's start there. Let's start with Kyle Tucker. As Kyle Tucker went to the team, everybody just assumed it wasn't going to sign him
Right.
because they weren't going to have enough money.
Yep.
And then the Dodgers are just like, oh, yeah, apparently money is simply not a real thing to us as they fork out the absolutely ludicrous contract. It feels like it's a bad contract, frankly.
Well, it's a
For
bad
like
contract when you look at the future prediction of what you think Tucker's going to be, except that they're only paying him only for 4 years. And so what they did and maybe this is the way baseball is heading, right? They're going to pay him now, and then he can go get his second half of his 8-year deal and a 4-year deal. And maybe by the time that comes around 4 years from now, it won't seem so bad to give a guy 35, 40 million bucks since we've got guys making 60 and there'll be other guys that do that. And if you add it up, he'll average $50 million a year for the 8 years,
of
something
that
like
what
that.
he right, but the issue is that from the perspective of it is a 4-year, $240 million deal, which is $60 million a year. Kyle Tucker, in order to equal the value of this contract, would need to put up about 8 WAR a season. He's never done that in his career.
He
So
hasn't come close.
he's not even come close. I don't think he's had above a 5 WAR season. So like,
Yeah, he's had a five
to
more
me,
season, nothing
pure
more.
value perspective, it's a bad deal. In a lot of ways, the best part about this deal for the Los Angeles Dodgers is that for the next 4 years, no other team in baseball has Kyle Tucker on their team.
Well, and here's a couple thoughts, right? So Tucker got the second highest AAV deal ever. Only his teammate Shohei Ohtani got more.
Mhm.
Even with the deferrals to 46 million, Shohei's deal was for 70 million. And on the Dodgers, Kyle Tucker is just another guy.
And when you look at the payrolls in baseball now, the Mets have somewhat tipped this because I think this gets them back above the Blue Jays now. I'm not 100%
With
sure
Bichette,
with Bichette where it falls because they're both close. But the Mets and the Blue Jays are the only teams in baseball in which the Los Angeles Dodgers payroll does not double it.
the only team.
Yeah, there's only 2 teams in baseball that the Los Angeles Dodgers payroll is not double of, and there's a bunch of teams where it's like 10 times the amount of. Basically, they are the amount their payroll is compared to some of the other teams. It is kind of laughable. It is everything we complained about with the Yankees in the '90s, but worse.
Right, and so we'll get deeper into because you started this talking about a salary cap, and I dropped an article today, and this was before Tucker signed, right? And my take was, when Kershaw came out last week and was really against the salary cap, saying how can these owners complain about not having enough money when the value of their franchise, this is what we always talk about, right, is going up, 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 and they're making multiples on their investment, and how can they complain about that? And you know what? There's a good point there.
But the point isn't that. The reason for the salary cap has nothing to do with that. Here's the reason for the salary cap. Fans are going to start checking out. Because think about how many fans are already sitting here thinking this year. If you're a National League fan this year, what's the point? Like, yes, okay, obviously you
Gotta
watch
play the season.
you
All
got to play
that
the
stuff.
season freely. You're gonna really tell me you're gonna beat the Dodgers? Like that's how everybody basically feels as a fan. And
Everybody
any
has to get injured on the team for them to not win.
right. You're just like, you have to come up with a reason why they're not going to win. So that immediately depresses fan interest because, unlike in the NFL, where unless you're the New York Jets, every team has a chance to win every year. That's really not the case in baseball. You're like, okay, well, maybe we have the chance to lose to the Dodgers in a playoff series. Because I think how 98% of teams feel right now. Maybe the Mets, the Phillies, and the Braves don't feel that way, and the Cubs.
I don't think the Mets feel that way right now. But
Every team feels that way. You look at that lineup, you look at that rotation. What is your argument for? Yeah, this is our angle to beat them in a series, and that's why you're going to have a salary cap because all of a sudden fan interest is going to dwindle because who cares about watching your team when they can't win?
our friend Jeff Cohen from the Baseball and Barbecue BBQ Park podcast, weighed in on saying, interesting idea, but as long as you have the word salary cap, MLBPA will never agree to that. So we need to call it something else. Call it some other baloney term.
Which is weird because you could argue that the MLBPA is one of it's probably the weakest players unions of all of the pro player unions in terms of what they're able to do and push the owners into doing. The owners basically do whatever they want 99% of the time. So if they're are they really going to be able to stop them from putting in a salary cap if they want to? I don't know. I think and will you be able to spend getting a salary cap and a salary floor as a good thing for the league? That now all of a sudden all of these teams that never spend any money are now forced into spending money, and yet maybe that comes at the expense of the top end of the guys getting absolutely stupid contracts. But look, and look at the NBA.
That's why Kershaw has to defend that, right? Because he's one of those top guys going, well, I don't want to. He can't come out and say, oh, well, we should really do this for the rank and file when he just got paid a huge amount of money for his whole career.
Right, but look at basketball. If basketball didn't have the cap, it wouldn't be fun. Because then you would just have all of the best teams buy all of their best players. And Kyle Tucker basically signed the equivalent of an NBA Supermax deal.
That's a good point. I think it's right. And I think the idea that there's no way that the Player Association could ever accept the salary cap that's old thinking. And I think why they're sticking to this. It's just out of tradition, and there's like 20 guys in Major League Baseball who really benefit from that the most. But there's a lot of guys who are making the MLB minimum, which was $760 this year, $760,000. So the moment you have a salary cap and a salary floor in there, that floor at $760, that minimum salary is going to go up.
Right, because all of a sudden those teams suddenly now the Marlins can't get away with paying a bunch of guys the major league minimum. They have to spend money on some guys. So even if they're not the best players, they're going to have to suddenly the major league minimum has to go up. So all of a sudden everybody's making more money because you as a team can't cheap out and benefit from the Dodgers making an ungodly amount of money, basically.
And you said it right. So if you look at the other teams that are in the National League vying with the Dodgers, to do that, you want to include the Padres, the Phillies, the Mets, the Braves, and all that. What happened yesterday makes them think, well, what are we even bothering trying to do that? We thought we gained some ground, but we've actually lost more than we gained.
Right. The Dodgers are the same team as they were last year, except they've added Kyle Tucker and Edwin Diaz.
Yeah, the best closer in baseball, or arguably the best closer in baseball,
and one of the best offensive
position player free agent. And by the way, when you look at what the free agent availability is, we still have Framber and Bellinger to go this year. Next year's free agent class, it's
I think Passan.
Terrible.
I want to say it was Passan that lit somebody up, but he was like, when you look at it, he's like, Jeremy Pena is the best free agent hitter next season. And it's like, okay, that's actually kind of disrespectful for Jeremy Pena because if you look at his advanced
he's pretty good.
He's really good.
Yeah.
But that's in terms of name value. He's the best hitter available. You've got nobody big coming up with an almost for sure to be lockout now. There's just no way you're not going to have some kind of issue going into this offseason.
Well,
and so I think,
and that's if I am falling harder and harder. And even though I think the salary cap and salary floor, the salary cap is stupid that the owners can't control themselves. We need to have some artificial head. But you know
I
what?
don't think it's about controlling themselves. I think the Dodgers are just like, oh, we have the money.
Right.
What are you going to do
Right.
about it?
And you know what? If you did you watch the NFL playoff games last weekend? Okay, talk about a league where the salary cap has benefited. Most of those games, except for the last two, were really fun to watch. And MLB, NFL has a salary cap. The hockey, National Hockey League has a salary cap. NBA has a salary cap. It's working pretty well there. So why? Oh no, we can't ever have it. That's our legacy that we have a salary. What the hell is that?
Yes, exactly. And when you look at it, it is truly now at the point where it's like, even if the Cincinnati Reds owners spent like all of their money, they wouldn't be able to compete. They don't have enough money.
Nor do they have enough players to go and buy because the Dodgers bought them all.
Right. Exactly. It's not like it's gotten to the point now with the Dodgers that other teams. It's not like, oh, okay, they're not spending in the cases. The Dodgers are now spending to the magnitude that other teams literally cannot spend the money the Dodgers are spending to.
And I don't. This is going to sound. I don't blame Andrew Freeman and the Dodgers. I don't blame him at all. You know, and for all the other teams that didn't go, yeah, we could give Kyle Tucker an absolutely stupid contract and still make money, because you're right, the Tucker deal on its own value is like, that's crazy.
The Mets gave him a stupid contract. I would have been kind of annoyed if the Mets had signed him to that contract because it's a ludicrous contract. What the Dodgers want is like, you don't expect the Dodgers to then look at that with their current roster as constructed already with the amount of salary go, and they'll go, okay, yeah, we'll just give them like one of the highest AAV value deals ever. After already, like, the Mets lost Diaz and Tucker to the Dodgers in an offseason to the two, like, it's like, you can't say David Stearns didn't spend money when that was what he lost it to.
And the Mets offered, would you have been okay with the Mets offering him $55 million a year for 4 years with no deferred money and a $75 million sign? No, I don't care about a signing bonus.
Year 2 and 3.
Yeah.
They gave him everything he wanted. The Dodgers just literally offered more money.
They offered more money and they offered him cover. He is gonna, so there's Mookie Betts and there's Freddie Freeman and Shohei Ohtani and it's all these other guys. So no one's going to be looking at Kyle Tucker the way they'd look at him if he were on the Mets.
Tucker kind of seems like a guy he was looking for that.
Yep.
He does not seem like a big limelight kind of guy. I think he's totally going to be happy being in LA, not needing to be a big face. He's just another guy on that team. He gets to just show up and play baseball, and he doesn't have to worry about doing all the stuff that Shohei and Mookie have to do.
And I guess on one side, I'm glad that at least somebody wanted to come to the Mets in Bichette, because it started to look like going, I guess nobody wants to play with these guys. It's what it starts to look like.
The Bichette deal, it's 3 years. So, okay, that makes perfect sense if you're the Mets to sign him to this deal, because it's like, okay, your infield set for the next 3 years. And moving him to third base makes sense because he was not a great defensive shortstop. And now, okay, you have questions at first base still, but you could handle that. And now it's like, okay, Bichette, Lindor, Simeon is a much better infield than what you had at second, between the rotating doors you had at second and third last year.
And I guess that my friend Steve was saying that in his eyes, Bichette actually might be an upgrade at third base over Beatty, and I hadn't really thought about it that way because I tend to think of Beatty as Beatty as an up and coming good fielder. But maybe he's right. Maybe it's not a downgrade. Even if it's neutral.
Well, right. Purely for like Bichette, in terms of he plays average defense and he's the same offensive player as he was last year. He's just better than Brett Beatty. Like Beatty would have like that's kind of as simple as it is. So he would have to be actively very bad at defense at third base, and a lot of the things that made him not a great shortstop are mitigated at third base with he wasn't the fastest guy at shortstop. That doesn't matter nearly as much at third base.
So in terms of what's left out there in the free agent cupboard, there's not much, right? You've got Framber. You've got Bellinger. Those are the two, probably highest, level free agents. And when I was writing my notes, I thought, I guess Zach Gallen must have done something really bad to people because he doesn't even get talked about.
Well, I think Cody Bellinger, this signing makes it clear to me Cody Bellinger is going to the Yankees.
It seems that way. They haven't done anything.
They haven't done anything. They've got to spend the money. He profiles perfect. Like he fits that team better than going anywhere else. And I think he kind of knows that. So it's sort of like they're just going to wait each other out at this point. And they're going to go, Framber, I don't know where he's going to go now because you could have argued that he was a good fit for the Mets, but I don't think they're going to want to give him a big contract right after they give this contract to Bichette. Now, I think because especially for this contract for Bichette is the exact type of deal the Mets wanted to give somebody this offseason. They were like, we only want to give somebody a big, like, short-term deal. That was exactly what they were able to do with Bichette. I think they're going to be happy with that. And I'm happy with that. I'm going to like watching him be our third baseman next year. Framber. I don't know what the market is for him now. Who's going to spend the money on him? The Dodgers?
Why not? Why not? Why wouldn't it be the Dodgers? Would you think that this sort of signals from the Mets perspective that they have been sitting on a trade all winter that they haven't been able to make, and they needed all this smoke to clear, and now they can do whatever it is that was the master plan? Because I can't believe the master plan was Bichette for 3 years.
Here's what's wild. The Phillies had a 7-year, $200 million offer into Bichette, and they thought they were going to sign him. And the Mets swooped in at the last minute after Tucker signed and gave him the 3-year, 126 deal. And they signed him away from the Phillies at like the last second.
That doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like he got a little more, got higher AAV, obviously, but 7 years at Bichette's age, that's weird. Almost like he didn't want to be a Philly. I don't know if I can say that. But
right. But yeah, like they thought they were gonna get him until the Mets swooped in with that deal. It's a much bigger AAV deal because he's getting less than 30 a year on that deal.
Right.
And with a 7-year deal at his age, he's probably not getting another big deal. So he might look at that and go, I could probably get a better deal 3 years from now and make more money overall by not taking that deal. He's only got to make 20 million. He's got to make 20 million a year the next 4 years after this deal.
You're exactly right, and that's what I thought about Pete Alonso when he left. Going the way you get there, you shouldn't worry about if you're trying to get an average over a longer period of time. It could be front loaded, and then you get less on the back end. But by the time you get to the back end, that less is more because inflation and prices have gone up. So it's going to be, what 30 million today is
what you're really
4 years.
Really, as a player, what you have to be asking yourself is, what is the likelihood in my mind that, natural fall off? Like, how honest can you be with yourself? What is my natural fall off likely to be like in the next 3 to 4 seasons? Where am I going to be when I'm going to be looking to sign that next term deal? Because for some players, but for Bo Bichette, let's say all of a sudden he falls off a cliff on this deal with the Mets, totally possible.
You have to consider that's possible.
Live in that world. If that happens, he's not getting another big deal, and then he's in trouble now because he signed this deal and got a ton of money, but now nobody wants to sign him, and he's older, and it's going to be really rough. So that's sort of like the balancing act that you're taking as a player. Whereas, if he had gone with the Phillies, I think what Bichette is saying with this deal is, I'm still going to be good enough 3 to 4 years from now that I'm going to be able to sign another big long-term deal. So he's betting on himself to stay healthy and play well during this contract.
And certainly from the standpoint of looking at the Mets as they are right now, I agree with you that Bellinger is just not. If he were to come to the Mets, which I don't think is going to happen any more than you do, I think he'd play center field probably and not first base. I mean, you can't really be, unless you're really convinced that Carson Bench and Taylor are going to be able to man center field.
Right. You have to think they're doing is right now the Mets starting outfield is Juan Soto. Tyrone Taylor and Jared Young. And I know.
Well, I don't know. No. You're overstating.
Right now on the roster, that is the projecting starting left fielder because Carson Bench isn't on the roster. So obviously, that's not going to be the case. But I think the same way that you can't really go, oh yeah, Brett Beatty's going to be the left fielder of the future. I mean, maybe, but that was likely not a plan that you ever had before. Probably, let's see, maybe 45 minutes ago, literally, because it's the 12:45 and you signed Bo Bichette at about noon East on Friday today. So there's no way you've been working Brett Beatty out in left field preparing for this eventuality.
I saw pictures this week, video this week from I don't know where they were in Texas. It was Semien, Brett Beatty, and
Lindor working out.
And Lindor working out together, and Beatty at third base throwing the ball, going, yeah, he is not going to go to left field. I actually do believe he's going to be traded, and I think it's going to be to the Marlins. And I maybe because I'm hoping it's going to be Sandy Alcantara, and there's going to be other assets that are going to go with him. It could be Luis Angel.
I would kind of hope we could get some. I don't know if I love that deal from the Mets perspective. You'd have to trade more just from a salary perspective
Right,
in that deal. So
right.
that I think that would make that a little hard. Who knows? Maybe the Mets think they have a Tatis Jr. situation on their hands. You moved Tatis Jr. to the outfield, and he immediately became a Gold Glove right fielder. Maybe the Mets know something we don't with Brett Beatty. I don't think that's the case, but who knows? It is. We have precedent.
Last Met thing, because we could go on forever, as everybody knows. Vientos is your first baseman right now?
I don't think so. The Mets don't even talk about that being really a possibility. They don't seem to be anything like it unless they're just like, unless it's such a foregone conclusion for them that they're just not talking about it. But like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like they talk more about Perdomo at first base than Vientos.
I mean, no, Polanco.
Polanco, sorry.
Yeah. I think they envision him being DH Polanco and sort of filling in different places. And if they slotted it that way, you could see a team where Beatty's your left fielder, Benj and Taylor share center, Soto and right, Bichette, Lindor, Semien, Vientos, and Alvarez. That's not a bad hitting team. But because
It just has some.
we saw David Stearns was saying, well, I want defense, defense, defense. I'm not feeling that there.
Right. You have some really scary possibilities in terms of you could have a very weak left and right field defensively. You could have a very weak first base defensively.
That sounds like last year.
Kind of sounds like now you've probably improved overall. You've improved at second.
Yep.
You have improved at second, no matter what you thought about,
And you're no worse at third, if not better.
Right. Maybe a little worse at third, but I don't think a significant amount of worse at third.
I don't know. I don't know how to evaluate Bichette at third.
Right. And then in terms of left field, Nimmo did not have a good year defense.
Right. That's why putting Beatty out there, could he be that much worse than Nimmo was in left field?
Right. I think Met fans don't love acknowledging that, but yeah, Nimmo had a rough year defensively, and I think that's a lot of the reason why they were willing to move on from him, because it was like, okay, it was already getting bad defensively, and it wasn't going to get better, and you don't have a DH spot for him, and he didn't really want a DH.
And I kept saying it's the last Met thing. So let's say you would have kept Nimmo, you kept Pete Alonso, you signed these guys, and the Dodgers did what they did. You go, well, what did we even bother? Why did we bother doing that?
Right.
And you kept Diaz. Let's say you kept Diaz and the Dodgers didn't get Diaz too. Okay, so now you're looking at this. So they got Tucker.
Now you're like, okay, well, maybe now we can compete.
Nah, I don't.
Starting pitching's not there. Right, with that starting pitching now.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So, we've go ahead.
No, I just think it's just going to be really interesting to see because does this depress what happens the rest of the offseason? Our team's going to start scrambling like the Mets clearly did and going to sign Bichette. Is all of a sudden Eugenio Suarez is suddenly the only guy left on the market that's worth signing offensively? Is all of a sudden some team going to back up a truck to him and be, you know what, at least he'll hit 40 home runs for us?
Yeah. Well,
Freeman will have to go somewhere. I don't know where though. Maybe Baltimore. Maybe this helps Baltimore because it takes two teams out of the running for him, and maybe they can now offer him a deal that's a little bit more fits their actual ability to offer.
Yeah, and how do you feel if you're the Padres, Giants, and Diamondbacks in the West going, okay, we kind of gave it the old school try, but now do they evaluate their position and go, okay, you know what? Sell assets. We're not going to win this year. Could have a lockout next year.
But here's the problem, and I think this is what's going to, and this is why I think you're going to get a salary for. How are you going to acquire enough assets to beat the Dodgers?
Right.
Like, what are you going to do? How are you going to develop enough players simultaneously? You would have to somehow develop the super generation where like 18 prospects come at once between your pitchers and your position players, that all of a sudden, like, oh, we basically homegrown an entire team in one generation and now we're ready. And that's, I don't think, ever happened.
Right. The Dodgers have eight players.
They're just going to pay for more players.
They have 8 players that have $100 million contracts or more.
Some teams don't even have $100 million payroll.
Right. I don't know about that. Well, maybe there's somebody at 90 or 80. That's true. I looked
The
recently.
Marlins have $100 million payroll
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now. I'm kind of curious.
yeah. Um, and it seemed earlier this week that everybody was it this week or was it last week? Because we didn't do a podcast last weekend when Bregman went to the Cubs and then they signed Edward Cabrera. It's like, hey, those Cubs are serious. Well, how do the Cubs feel right about now? Did they do
I
enough?
can't imagine great.
Did they do enough? Like, oh, we didn't do enough. We had Kyle Tucker last year. Wait, that was our guy. So,
Miami is dead last in baseball at exactly $100
okay,
million.
yeah, I knew it was close.
So
Well,
like,
when they trade Alcantara to the Mets and they take back, some salary the Mets will give him, but not as much, they'll go under again.
right, the Mets are now up to second because they're at 358 right now for their projected taxpayer. The
And
Dodgers are at
they're
fourth.
finally not paying Verlander and Scherzer this year, right? That's
Right,
now.
right. Right, they've got some huge contracts there, so it is very interesting. I'm really curious to see. I think this is going to build interestingly. I think this is going to build a ton of hype for the World Baseball Classic because people are going to view that as almost more pure now because it's just guys on a team. It's not the Dodgers versus the world. It's anybody could win this. This is going to be more interesting.
We
I
don't
think
know who's going to win.
right, or it doesn't feel like a predetermined conclusion. Because now, and I think you're going to run into a situation whereas unless the Dodgers suddenly have a bunch of injuries, the regular season's going to really feel like it means nothing this year. Because even if the Dodgers aren't in first, as long as they're in the playoffs, everybody's going to feel like they're going to win. Even because it's like, okay, they were a little banged up, they'll get healthy in time.
Yeah, and it's hard to see that happening right now, only because you look at the everything, every aspect of their team, and they've got massive depth there. They could like every year they could afford losses to the starting rotation, and they can afford losses in the lineup and still be an awesome offensive team. Not that you expect that to happen, but they're built in that way,
But
which
right, this feels like as super team as we've seen in a really, really long
yeah,
time.
the weak link is Teoscar. That's really the weak link.
Right, right.
Maybe Andy Payas in center field too.
Maybe. Right. That's their worst player. He'd be a starter on a lot of teams. I take him on the Mets.
Yeah, me too. Guy hit 27 home runs and plays great defense in center field. Sign me up.
Right. There's only a couple teams in baseball. Like the Cubs might be one of the few teams that are like, nah, we're good. We'll pass on him. Whoever gets
So,
Cody Bellinger might be the other.
so the let's give a look because we haven't done anything. I just want to mention, any thought on Arenado leaving the Cardinals and accepting the move to the D-backs?
That feels like such a I like the move from the D-backs perspective in that that's still a pretty young team and getting a veteran presence in like Arenado, especially what had to be a pretty depressed St. Louis situation because now they've tumbled down to the bottom of the payroll rankings. They're not spending any money either. And I just think that I like that move from their perspective. I like the move from the Cardinals because it finally feels like they're committing to the rebuild. Just it took them a couple of years longer to realize that than everyone else. Like, okay, the time to move on from Arenado was like 2-3 seasons ago, but you
Right,
guys just
right.
didn't really want to do that.
Better ballpark for him though, to hit him for what that's worth, in Arizona than it is in St. Louis.
Certainly, and he'll help them defensively because he's still a great fielder. I think it's a good move from them. I think it's a good move from the Cardinals. I don't think it's going to be a big needle mover, but it could be the difference between in terms of the Diamondbacks now have a sneaky chance to win the World Series, especially after the Kyle Tucker signing.
Right.
But given that they just missed the playoffs last year, that is the kind of move that could make a difference and help them make the playoffs this
We're
year.
going to give it the old school try.
Hey, you know what? They were the team that took out the Dodgers 2 seasons ago,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
it's possible.
I was a little harsh on the Yankees because they said they did nothing. They did sign Ryan Weathers, whose daddy pitched for the Yankees, and that's probably the most amusing part about that whole thing. Although what it tells me is that they don't expect Garrett Cole to be ready. Rodon's obviously not going to be ready to start the season. Weathers is just there to do the
Innings.
Yes, who was the Mets guy that got hurt last year?
Griffin Canning.
Canning. He's there just to sort of, tide
Right.
us over.
He's there to be an arm to use for the first 2 months of the season
Right.
until your better pitchers come off of the injury.
And that's smart. That's
Right.
that's good. That's a good job.
And he signs that deal because if he pitches well, maybe he's not the guy that gets demoted when Garrett Cole comes back.
And somebody's got to come out of the American League to play the Dodgers in the World Series next year, right? It's like,
Right.
why not the Yankees?
Right, the Yankees can probably look at it and say, you know what, we're Garrett Cole away from being in the World Series. Let's get Garrett Cole back, and we can think about this differently.
Yeah, yeah. So we're going to record a podcast after the Hall of Fame vote on Tuesday with the Athletics' Dan Brown, who actually has already posted his Hall of Fame votes, and I won't spoil it, but you can go and read the Athletic if you want to see who he voted for. But I think his colleague Jason Stark put a column out and put his votes out there. Basically that everything is flipping a little bit because you're going to see guys that don't have career stats now considered. Once this spate of guys gets off the ballot, you're left with Utleys and David Wrights and guys like that who were really excellent for a maybe smaller period of time and don't have career numbers, but were really fantastic baseball players that deserve consideration.
Right, because it becomes very hard to argue for David Wright's inclusion when Alex Rodriguez is sitting there on the ballot and you're not putting him for a reason in that isn't his stats. Because you're like, okay, well, how can you tell me that on the basis of stats, Wright needs to be in ahead of A-Rod? And it's like, well, was A-Rod did the stuff we didn't like? But yeah, it's like he's not even close to him. Well, now A-Rod's gone, so there isn't that point of comparison. And if you're going to be looking for a guy, you have to start putting some guys in because you can't have a run of years and put nobody in until some of the newer guys start retiring.
Cole Hamels is going to look really good like 2 or 3 years from now when there's not a lot of guys left on the ballot,
Right, exactly. We're going to have a run here where there's not these crazy stuffed ballots. And then we're going to have a run where there's like a bunch of guys. We've got some guys that are coming up. Pujols retired last
Cabrera.
year. Right. You're going to have some guys coming up, but that's only one or two. It's not like you're going to have legions of guys coming in that all need to get elected.
I think there's a year where like Joey Votto and there's, but again, that little hump, and then you'll end up a few years later with Scherzer if he ever retires. Obviously Kershaw now and Verlander. So there's enough to keep us along, but hopefully no zeros.
Right. Kershaw, Verlander, and Scherzer will sort of tide over the starting pitching market. But the problem is they're all still playing. So you're going to have another 5 years until they're eligible.
I saw that Kershaw is going to pitch for the U.S. in the World Baseball Classic. And I scratched my head a little bit.
I think he just wants to go and hang out.
I guess. It must be such a fun thing to do. And of course, you can be on that team and like never pitch.
Right. Right, exactly. Kershaw's going because he wants to go and hang out with his buddies, be a part of the team, be there.
Throw an inning every once in a while.
Right, maybe they need one inning from him in a meaningless game because it's some round robin game in the group stage. They're pummeling somebody, and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll go get an inning out of Kershaw where we don't have to use one of our other pitchers. Cool, save Tarek Skubal an inning or two.
You have Skeens and Skubal there, so it's probably going to be okay.
Right, exactly. It's like any innings we can save them, I'm pretty sure the Pirates and the Tigers are going to appreciate.
Do you think before we sign off, and I thought this when I saw the Tucker deal, but now not since the Bichette deal that just happened literally during this podcast.
Within the last hour.
Yeah. Do you think the Mets sell the house to get Skubal? Instead of free agent pitcher, does that actually will that make a difference considering what they'll have to give up? Which is a lot.
What you're giving up isn't things that would affect your ability to win it this year.
That is true.
I think, could they win it all if they had Skubal? If it breaks all right, maybe. But you can say that about a lot of teams.
Agreed.
And I think with Skubal, I would give them more than a puncher. Like they need less things to break right for them than a lot of other teams.
Completely agree. So yeah.
Right. So because it's like, okay, you have Skubal at the top of that rotation. It's like, okay, yeah. If McLean is the guy that we think it is, that's a 1-2 punch right there. And then all you need is one of the other pitchers to be a stud.
Yep.
And now you've got a chance.
Yep.
You don't need all of them. You just need one of Senga, Peterson, any of those guys to figure it out. And you've got and then you need your bullpen to be good. And You've got the lineup then. So
I think that's probably been in the back of the Mets' mind all off season. I hoped Detroit would sort of not do that and try to win with Skubal this year. But the risk is too high for them to do that, it seems.
Right. This move almost makes it good, like, because it's like you're like, how are we supposed, like, even if we keep now, I guess if you're the Tigers, would the World Series appearance this year with Skubal be worth it? Just getting there. Say nothing about the win, because even if you have Skubal, if you play the Dodgers, like, you could lose that, and I don't know if that's going to affect you too much because it's the Dodgers this
Well,
year.
wouldn't it be just a tease, because then you'd lose him anyway next season, and you would have gotten just there, and you're not going to get close
Well,
without
the
him
hope
after
would
that.
be if you get to the World Series, he'll maybe he's more willing to re-sign with you and run it back. That would be the
As
hope.
long as you roll out, $60 million a year for him, sure, no problem.
Right. I guess then the thing would be get something before the Dodgers might just end up signing him.
Why not? Why would they? They're going to sign everybody.
Right. And that's how it feels right now as a fan. And I'm sure as a Dodger fan, it feels great because you're like, cool, we're going to win the World Series again.
Well, let's talk to Dan. Also, I want to ask him about that. We'll ask him about his Hall of Fame votes, but let's kind of ask him, because I'm interested in his take on where are we headed here, and he's certainly a great person to talk. So check out that episode. It drops next Monday, and
Yeah. Well, at least you know what? At least thinking about Bo Bichette makes this a little bit more fun.
yes, this was a fun podcast. So you know what? This week in baseball actually had stuff happen.